Thank you for joining us for our live webinar, Beyond Surviving. How will the brands navigate in a post-COVID world? Today, being the new norms that applied in the society due to COVID, looks like it will continue to be staying with us for quite long. Therefore, all of us are forced to make changes, adapt to the new way of living and working. Today, we have three speakers with us. I am Anil, Marketing and Strategy Director from Whisper Media. For those who don't know about us as Whisper Media, we are a AdTech solution company. We work with broadcasters and content publishers to integrate brands into the content seamlessly by using our embedding technology. And with me, Ms. Kanika, creative lead for Kandar, and Mr. Mako, media lead from Kandar as well. In next 40 to 45 minutes, we will take you through the presentation, and please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A box. Happy to address as many as question. And if any questions that we are not able to address it by email. Today, we will be covering 4 key subjects. One is about how the consumers have been feeling about the current situation and what are the changes has been emerging on their behavior, how that has been changed during the COVID season, and we should be connecting with the consumers and how that innovations can drive brands into take the advantage or take the conversation with the consumers.
Okay, a very good afternoon to everyone, and thanks for your time this afternoon. We're going to first talk about how are consumers feeling and how were they feeling when just COVID came in, how are they feeling now, and basically how can brands actually then engage them going forward. First things first, when this pandemic caught Malaysia, it caught them by a surprise. So you caught them by surprise. So basically, when it started in Wuhan, people had already started to take those precautions. If you would have noticed, a lot of people were wearing masks, they were using sanitizers quite often, and basically they had also started to avoid the public gatherings and things like those. But even then, it hit Malaysia hard, and which was quite a big surprise for Malaysians. At that time, there were a lot of different kind of feelings that triggered, which we'll show you in the next one. Next slide. There was a lot of emotional response from the Malaysian consumers, and this is quite similar still, I would say. They're still in a very crisis mode. There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of how consumers are feeling at this point in time. And amidst of this uncertainty, we have a lot of financial stress, which we're just going to talk about now. The next slide. And when the world was talking about next slide. When the world was talking about health and well-being, Malaysians were also stressed about their financials. By financials, what they meant was my own job, my own personal finances. They were not actually prepared for it. It was a surprise for them. And it was actually not just a fear. 94% of consumers did see a reduction in their income. And hence, it's an opportunity for brands to think, how can they make their offerings more affordable for consumers? While we're talking about a lot of stress, a lot of financial stress as well, going to the next slide, we'll show you, next slide. Yeah, going to the next slide. Yeah, we will show you that Malaysians are still moderately optimistic about the economy. Okay, so if you were to compare these statistics versus the western part of the world, Malaysians are still moderately optimistic about recovery of the economy, and overall the sentiment is somewhere optimistic, moderately optimistic, not very optimistic. Huh? Going to the next slide, what it means for Malaysian economy is based on consumer sentiment, it is meant to have a U-shaped recovery. Okay, while a lot of other countries like countries like China and Indonesia, based on consumer sentiment, they will recover very fast in a V shape, but yeah, Malaysia is expected to to have a U-shaped recovery. What will it impact on different categories, and basically what can we do in that sense is something we're going to talk about now. Going to the next slide. We did a COVID barometer study to gauge what are the behavior changes that we can see in these in different categories, you know, because this COVID impacted different categories in different ways. What we saw was that there were some categories which increased intention. Consumers were not intending to buy that before, but they started to consider because of COVID. Some of those categories were around insurance products, purchase of TV units. A lot of consumers purchased TV units in Malaysia, and they had not planned it before, to be fair. And banking products, safe investments are something that are kind of gaining consumers' mind at this point in time, and they started to consider that. In terms of things that they felt they will purchase, but because they can't go to a shop, but they will continue purchasing. There are some of the categories which lie in this zone, which is like on-demand video, TV subscription is one of the most prominent there. Banking products, investment products, etc., was some that, you know, if they thought about it purchasing, they did go ahead and purchase them online. There were some categories that saw a little decline, which a little decline or a lot of decline sometimes. So basically, categories like auto or any long-term durable saw an interim delay or a cancellation for that particular category. In Malaysia, most of these categories see a lot more delay than cancelling. People are still considering it, but with a delayed cycle. Travel and tourism does have a longer term delay. Having said that, it may feel that, you know, MCU has started to lift, and, you know, will it still be important? Yes, of course, it is going to be important, because social distancing is here to stay. And beyond that, you know, it has changed people's lives in various ways. For example, a lot of technological giants like, you know, Google have announced work from home till the end of the year. You know, even technology giants like TCS in India have announced that by 2025, 75% of their workforce will be permanently working from home, which is, you know, almost 300,000 people, if I were to just say. And that's not the only companies going to do that. Gradually, we will see this trend coming up, because what this COVID situation did was also a stage of experimentation where, you know, a lot of everybody worked from home and kind of experimented whether this works for their industry or not. So it may become a long-term way of working. Going forward, let's look at essentially what do we need to drive for, you know, recovering our brands, getting the growth back. We have broadly three buckets to talk about. First is, let's understand how has media landscape changed, and hence how do brands need to adapt and communicate using the relevant touch points, which is the first thing. Then we will talk about building strong connections with consumers. How do we do? Because it's very important at this point in time. And then innovate for the new normal. What are those small innovations that can take you to a long way? And basically, what are those newer needs that are emerging that brands can actually tap in? Okay. Now passing it to Marco, who's going to talk about the media landscape. Marco and Anil.
So how is media landscape changing? So in the past couple of months, we have already been observing changes in Malaysian media habits. I think you guys have been bombarded with a lot of insights, a lot of learnings from many different sources. You've read it in the newspapers, you've listened to it on television, you've read it on magazines or your favorite websites. But hopefully we will provide you additional information to what you already know. So allow us to share it with you some insights. So one of the biggest questions that we were asked often is, shall I continue to stop or my media investment at this time of COVID? But even before we start sharing insights on investments and consumption, I'd like to quickly touch on the importance of why we think it is important for us to build strong brands. So just to share with you that in the last 14 years, the biggest lesson we've learned is that strong brands generate superior stakeholder returns. And at the same time, based on our data, they're the fastest or the quickest to recover from a recession. So if you notice that the last the global recession that we experienced was in 2018, 2019, thereabouts. And if you've noticed, brand Z, top 10 powerful brands, were the fastest to recover in terms of shareholder value. In fact, it's even faster than some of the companies included in the S&P 500 index or even in the MSCI World Index. So just to show that the most powerful top 10 brands enjoy the highest customer endorsement and loyalty, outgrown by even some of the financial indices. So really what we're saying is brand investment is a must do for all companies to ensure long-term sustainable financial growth, especially in the VUCA world. Just to continue, so what we found out from our simulations really reveals that, if brands totally go dark, they could lose about 13% of existing volume sales. And this is tough because we know that we need more media investments to get back the 13% of shares that we've lost compared to what we had just got back. So the same simulations we had at Kantar show that if you really have to go dark, you shouldn't go by more than 6 months long. If possible, just decrease your investments by less than half. And if the charts on the right show us that in varying simulations of media spends, you've noticed that total brand communications awareness, or TBCA, behave in the same way as you cut your media. For example, if it's going to be the same budget, there's not much differentiation in terms of how the TBCA moves. But if you cut down budgets by about 50% or worse, or completely go out of dark, there is a corresponding increase in TBCA, which dives very significantly. Okay, the next question that clients most often ask is, where should I advertise? Which channels or touch points? So it is almost intuitive that people are really turning to what we call at-home channels. So from our survey in China.
You want me to continue? You want me to?
Yeah, this is the right slide, Anil.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. So from our survey in China, online videos really top the list or activities, as well as television. So in addition, there are online games or online learning or entertainment. So it is no surprise that the time spent on personal screens have significantly increased too. So will we see the same impact in Malaysia? Our data suggests that yes, in fact, some home streaming is in fact already rising. So with the shift in at-home channels, we think marketers should also revisit their channel selection now or skew towards digital. So when consumers go digital, we're saying don't forget television. So similar data from China shows that about 40% of consumers consume different forms of digital as well as television. And in fact, it has increased during the coronavirus outbreak or the lockdown. So with the need to stay informed and personal need for personal entertainment, don't miss out on investments beyond the usual big platforms like digital news, and of course social media is there, and music streaming platforms. So with the rise of TV, are we seeing a comeback for television? So just comparing some data from our colleagues in other parts of the world. So data from Kantar Media Spain, a country that is currently in lockdown, shows how TV consumption have increased exponentially in the past couple of months. From the usual 3 or 4 hours consumed for every person on a regular weekend, since the lockdown, it has gone up to about 5 hours and a half, which is significant. So in the entire 2019 TV, they never had this level of consumption. So it just to show that as more people are spending time at home, definitely there is also a corresponding increase, in fact, on their consumption of television. News have been the main driver, as people need to be continually informed of what's happening in their country. So Spain is a country with a very heavy TV consumption as well as digital. And if you ask me, we have very similar patterns here in Malaysia, very advanced and very high connection of the internet as well as television. So we may expect the same consumption pattern in Malaysia. So I'll turn you over to Anil to discuss some interesting insights and data from what we have gathered.
Thank you, Marco. I think my net connection is a little slow. Please bear with me. So we have seen that some of the international other markets in different continents have seen how television is moving, or television is getting more eyeballs, more reach, right? Now, if you look at deep dive into Malaysia scene, we can also see that similar trend is happening. It is around 24% increase in time spent of watching TV. Now, if you look at in terms of is it only time spent has gone up? No, it is not only time spent, is even reach as well has gone up. As a combined this one, we can see that the performance of almost every audience, every profile, every different, whether it is gender, race, age, or even different location wise, we can see that there is a difference in terms of, there is a spike. There's a spike in terms of viewership. Now, if we look at little more deep dive into the viewership pattern, now, if you look at in a time band space, right? For example, morning 6 to evening till midnight. If you look at, we can see that compared to January 2020, where there is the market was, it was okay pre-COVID kind of situation, to a COVID situation and an MCO, and whereas March and April can see a drastic lift is happening, especially in the daytime viewership. Now, this viewership is continuing in not only March, and it's continuing in April as well. So you can see that it's been consistently is happening. The lift in the daytime viewership is much higher compared to the prime time. However, the prime time, it's starting early. Unlike earlier, it was closer to 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. Now it is even starting around 7 p.m. So that means it's more viewers, more time spent is happening in television. Now, we also looked at in terms of in many other markets where the almost very, very close. It's not too much of differences compared to other markets. Now, when we look at in terms of during COVID time, so coming to the television per se, if we look at in a content and how the TV commercial break, we can clearly see that there is a complete spike in terms of consumption of content has been increased drastically over the last 6-7 weeks. Now that is continuing, right? It is not a one-off kind of scenario, and it is continuing. So it is also important that how brands is not only using television as a medium, but it's also about using how the content can be used for the benefit of brands to communicate and engage with the consumer on that. Yeah, back to you, Marco.
Great. So thanks for that, Anil, and really interesting to see like what are the different options for brands to communicate. Of course, the usual suspects are there. You have your television, your Facebook, you have your Twitter, you have your newspapers, magazines, a lot of digital platforms, but really brands need to adopt. I think the message is really brand needs to adopt and communicate using relevant touch points. And this phrase, relevant touch points, is especially important now that we have seen shifts in consumption behavior, in change in preference for people's consumption. So what we found out is, and based on learnings at Kantar, we found out that typically 20% of touch points deliver 80% of brand's impact. So we have a solution called Connect that can help you identify the 20%. And what does it mean by this? We call it the 80-20 rule, if you can allow us to say that, meaning that 80% of brand communications impact are delivered by 20% of touch points. So just to illustrate, here is an example of the varying number of touch points that a consumer is exposed to in a coffee category, one of the many categories that we work on. And what we observed is that, if you notice, there's almost 40 different ways of encountering messaging or communications from coffee advertising. So you have your buckets of paid media touch points, you have your bucket of point of sale touch points and earned touch points. And of course, lest we forget, there's a lot of digital touch points as well. So in a media world where there is increasing fragmentation of choices of ways for brands to communicate, really, I think it's becoming an increasingly insurmountable challenge for us to identify, so what among these 43 touch points really delivered my brand message. So in this particular example for coffee, what we found out that, of the 40 over touch points, the one that really mattered the most, or the one that delivers the most impact, would be shelf presence in stores, own product usage, TV advertisements, point of purchase display, and down the line. This is by no means applicable to other categories. Your particular categories or the brands you work on would have different sets of effective, I would say, relevant touch points. So we're able to find out and evaluate for you or assess what those 80% will be, okay? So if you notice, television is still very high there, but I think more than just using television ads is one other way to amplify our message. It's not just through TV ads, but also the smart integration of television and in-program content, which has the potential to deliver the brand message better. I think it's one of the strong points of Whisper Media. So why is this important? Okay, so at this period of COVID, as changes to the normal are already being observed, it's important to know that if the same channels are also working for your brands now than it were before. So I think it's a time for us to update our channel strategy and capture new nuances in consumption if there really is. So we can quickly set up Connect to uncover your new 20% of touch points and really focus your investments and efforts where it matters. So just very quickly, with Connect, you're unable to unearth the 20% that delivered the 80% impact. We can identify what are the threats and opportunities coming from competition and what they're doing. More importantly, we can improve how you use your touch points and how you can leverage on your strengths, whether you're already communicating or using it effectively. And lastly, tying it back to the first point as we started this presentation, is really to optimize your investments. Where are the touch points where you should, apply levers? For example, are you going to be more digital at this time, or more TV? Are you going to have less out of home because we see that less people are going outside and those sort of stuff. With Connect, we can give you strategic recommendations on how to effectively reallocate your budget based on your marketing challenges or objectives. So that's it for me for media. I think going a step further is to really identify how do we build a strong connection with consumers if we have already identified where to connect with them. And I'll bring you over to to Kanika to take us through the sections on creatives and innovations. Kanika?
Thank you, Mako and Anil, for the insightful piece. Now, the second thing that we're going to talk about is building strong connections with consumers, which is obviously through advertising through different touch points. Okay, so currently in this situation, consumers are very anxious, they're very stressed. And advertising is kind of a relief and a more of a distraction and escape from reality for consumers, which means that, uh, any, going to the next slide. Okay, increased marketing spends during a recession time can result in a long-term brand advantage. This is something that we also observed, and this is coming from a huge database of analysis done at 2008 period when there was another recession caused by the US banking system, etc. So brands that actually did increase their investment at that point in time versus competition did gain a longer term brand advantage. They recovered faster, they gained more sales. Going forward, now you would be wondering then what type of content should we be publishing? So we have some nuggets of learnings here. Going forward, what we know from a lot of sources in our database also is that the content that is done well, the right content done on the right touch points gives you 10 times more ROI than the ones that are not done. Okay, so it's all about ROI at this point in time. So select your content effectively and customize it basis your touch point. We have some relevant themes which can help you design the campaigns for the new normal, you and your clients. Going to the next slide now. The first one is a no-brainer, and we are talking about humoring them. So humor has always been quite important, but at this point in time, because of the stress that consumers have in life, humor is taking a bigger importance. Just think about, advertising works like general relationships. Okay, so if you are under stress today, and a friend who's not really a close friend comes in, steps in, and kind of soothes you down, takes away your stress, at least for some time you will feel a lot more bonded with that friend, right? So advertising also works in that scenario. In the stressful situations of consumers, if you can ease their what you call stress, it will help consumers bonding with the brands, of course. Okay, going forward, on similar lines, what we have is spread cheer and be inventive. So for some time, don't think so much about the product and the product features, but think more about connecting with them. So if I have a strong connection with consumers, there's a highly likelihood that I'll be in their top of the mind, or probably have a good share of mind with them. And if for a category, I'm the brand that is being recalled, consumer will take the pain of finding out the product and its features. But the first step is, do I have that connection, which is something that you can build through such kind of advertising. This is an advertisement that if Mako, you can help me play it.
I'm not able
Sorry,
to
the
do
voice
it.
won't work, but that's okay. Just play it for a minute. It doesn't play. That's okay. Basically, you can check this ad later. This ad was done by Hyundai, and basically what they are showing is what can you do when you can't go out of home. Okay, so do whatever you feel like, dance, probably take a dark selfie, spend some time doing nothing, eat whatever you like, make food, or whatever you think you miss when you are so busy. Take that time, do it for yourself. And basically they have actually stopped the talking about their own product. All they're talking about is enjoy, keep your sanity, and keep the beat. So one of the other critical elements that I would want to talk, and it has a very nice music. I really love this ad. You can watch it sometime later. One of the other critical elements of any advertisement is, integrate your brand well in your story. So while we're talking about the ad has to be humorous, it has to spread cheer, it has to have an impact in consumers' life. If it doesn't have a strong branding, it's just an enjoyable video. It might have an impact in consumers' life, but it may not have any impact on your brand. So branding is a super critical thing. Keep it essentially with, with the storyline. With this, we move to the next one. Next slide, where we can basically tell you using system 1 whether the kind of feelings that you wanted to trigger are being triggered by the scenes in the ad, and whether there is any misconnection there. Okay, going forward to the next one, which is another very critical element. Next slide, of good storytelling. To be fair, people are fascinated by stories, and it is the reason why global film industry continues to grow. People continue to buy books, and it is why for centuries we have been using stories to teach our children the kind of etiquettes or kind of learnings that we want them to pick up. Stories provide us an opportunity to engage with audiences, to leave a long-lasting memory, and also provoke the emotions that we want to. Okay, it can be a rational or an emotional response that we want to provoke, but whatever we want to, we can provoke through a powerful story. So let us see how we can help here. Next slide. Not only can we predict the effectiveness of the ad, we can also help looking at the facial coding, and it allows you to do an in-depth scene-by-scene analysis, helping you understand whether what you intended has been delivered or not. More often than not, the ads that don't work because they are not able to deliver what they intended to. So basically, I as a creative person wanted to say that yes, but consumers did not get it the same way. Okay, and hence it did not work in the market. So this allows you to understand whether it was taken in the same way as it was intended to. At the same time, is there a possibility of any optimization? Going to the next slide, this is an example we have taken for a ad which is basically which has a 6-second long setup. Now this setup had a very limited engagement, followed by about 4 to 5 seconds of a nice humorous joke. Okay, and after that came in the product. Typically a lot of ads are constructed in that way. While there is nothing wrong in this construct, what happened was that because consumers' engagement level went down towards the call of action, at the time when the brand was talking about the call to action, consumers weren't engaged. Okay, so in that sense, what the ad could have done better was the first 6 seconds, if that could have been minimized, and when we saw it, we could see that it could be minimized without losing the impact. Consumers could be more engaged till the end of the story, which is the call to action time. To be fair, starting of an ad is very, very important. It's a crucial element, I would say. Imagine you're watching any content or any movie that is boring in the starting itself. Okay, in that sense, I mean, would you want to watch it? We've seen consumers walking out of a movie theater even before the midway. So in that sense, they have paid there. They wanted to watch that movie. Obviously, there was something that enticed them to come there. This is free content that brands want consumers to watch. So in that sense, if its initial scenes are itself not enticing enough, of course, it will not catch consumers' eyes. This is even more important for digital material. Going forward, this is another theme that can help you develop advertising, and it is much more relevant for F&B kind of categories, or categories which can see basically new movements. So basically, what we are trying to say is, think with increase in in-home cooking, with increase in in-home occasions, see how creatively can you engage the whole family. How can you showcase the new normal that could connect better with consumers? Going forward, now we'll talk a little more about innovation, okay, which is innovating for the new normal. These are some generic category names for the new normal, and these may vary for different categories. So before you get into thinking about how to innovate, what to innovate, do think about how do these change for your own category, and of course we can help you do that. The first one, next slide, is fortify and safeguard, which is quite in line with what is happening currently. So what consumers are feeling at this point in time is protecting their body internally and externally. Also thinking about social distancing, which is here to stay for sure. And thinking about whether to go in closed spaces, or they're preferring open spaces more. Cramped spaces will be a threat for a longer time. While this is the broader theme, some brands have taken an initiative to go ahead and build some innovations. For example, a brand in Japan actually came out with a moisturizer which is protection from blue light, because a lot more consumers are getting exposed more and more to screens, and this is again a long-term behavior, because a lot of people may convert into work from home for a longer time period. Another thing that was tapped in by another innovator is a small, a pen sort of hang-on air purifier, which you can actually just use while you're traveling anywhere. Going to the next theme now, which is more about adaptive and prepared living. Yeah, adaptive and prepared living, wherein a lot of our food and beverages clients are actually trying to innovate in here. So contactless deliveries is something that most of them are going ahead with, wherein we are just talking about no touch delivery, contactless deliveries. China, some brands have gone a little beyond. So what they're doing is they've introduced drones to do the delivery. So it's completely touchless in that sense. Also, on a different tangent, some of the brands like Jaya Grocer took this adaptive living in a different way. So what they did was they had a special hour wherein elderly and vulnerable people can go and shop without being scared of the virus. And again, we don't even have a vaccine yet, so we don't know till when are these kind of behaviors going to stay. Sorry. Okay, going ahead to the next slide, we are talking about happiness and holistic health, which is more about I'm scared about the virus, so I'm thinking about my physical health quite a lot. So I'm stacking on probiotics, vitamins, immunity boosters. All these propositions are connecting much more with me as an individual. At the same time, China again, Kundun, what they did was they added a feature of a thermometer in their watch. So basically now, if you wear the watch, you will get to know as soon as you get a temperature, high temperature. And mental well-being is also becoming a lot more important, which is where, and this is really in line with, you know, the lockdown, staying at home, staying safe, maintaining your sanity. It is completely in line. So in that sense, even mental health, if brands can pick up as that their DNA, could give them a longer term brand purpose. Going forward to the next slide, we are talking about enhanced experiences. To be fair, some of these enhanced experiences were a luxury and were, you know, kind of innovation till last year, but now they may become an essential commodity. For example, you know, Sephora had this virtual artist, a virtual trial artist, which could be something fancy last year, but now just imagine, will women be able to try the testers? Probably not very soon. So it becomes a necessity. Hence, you think about your category and kind of innovate accordingly to make it, you know, to bring back consumers' confidence as well as bring back your growth. So one is, I need to assure my consumer that whatever I'm offering is safe. But if I go beyond just the safe thing, I will obviously gain more. Passing it, okay, so these are the small innovations that you could do. Just think about what are the needs that are emerging for your category and act accordingly to drive growth. Passing this back to Marco to just give us a sum up on the webinar.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kanika, for that. Guys, thank you for joining us again. Just to quickly run through what we presented to you today, four key buckets and four, I would say nuggets of insights that we think and hope you will be able to take with you today. So clearly, COVID situation has changed the market landscape. We've been overusing the phrase new normal. I think we are already experiencing it. And if we think that, you know, it's gonna be back to normal in the next 6, 9, even 1 year, I think that's a misnomer, essentially because we might be going into an age or a phase in which this really is gonna predict how we're gonna change, how we're gonna move towards our daily lives in the next years and or possibly decades. Okay, so Malaysians is no exception. We've seen how Malaysians have adopted and how they are embracing the new normal, while some have, you know, have been ahead of the curve, if I may say. And it's good to know that brands are already adjusting to this new normal. We like to use the saying that goes, in crisis there are opportunities, and I think it's something to live by, especially at this day and age, where we can be more creative with our approach to media, our approach to communications, such that, you know, how we communicate will be to advertise to audiences will be as impactful as it can be. So it's really a time for us to reimagine marketing to drive growth. We shared with you the 80-20 rule, in which 80% of impact is more often than not delivered by 20% of your touch points. So we encourage you to revisit your channel strategy and see and just give a closed examination if indeed the current touch points that you're using or plan to use will still be the most impactful for your consumers in the new environment. We've also shown you that there is evidence that stronger brands tend to recover fast post a crisis and come ahead of the competition. So if you have to really go out of or you have to really trim down your media investments, we recommend don't go lower than 50%. Okay, and if you have to really go dark, don't do it by more than 6 months. Okay. Third bucket of learning is 3 useful themes to consider is humor, spreading cheer, Of course, in this day and age where too much negativity is out there, we have to counter that. And I think we have a responsibility as well as advertisers or as marketers in general to paint a positive outlook or communicate something that's completely or that's opposite to what the consumers are already feeling. Third point is good storytelling goes a long way. We can help you make your stories precise and impactful. And lastly, innovation. So innovation in terms of addressing untapped needs or opportunity or in the new normal. There could be ideas out there that we can leverage and capitalize on. So let's keep our ears on the ground on what these changes are and adapt accordingly. Okay, because we know that even the relevant innovations can take your brand a long way. Next slide. So there are a lot of resources available for you. We can share you with them. In fact, this presentation as well is something we can share with you. We have a compendium on COVID, other sources of interesting learnings about making a lasting impressions via advertising, creative and effective, and other sources or solutions that we can help you with. We won't go into the details, but if ever there's anything, you can reach out to us anytime. So we are here to help with your big communications questions or challenges. So back to Anil to close the webinar and if you and answer questions that you may have. Anil, we can hear you.
So, sorry, before moving on to question and answer session, a little bit about us on the Whisper Media front. We do integrate brands into the content, as I mentioned earlier, innovative, scalable, and measurable solution to the brands. A short video which will be explaining about us, how brands have been integrated. In Malaysia, we work with both Media Prima and Astro and View, and both the TV, television and digital platforms on that. All right, that's let's moving on to the question and answer. There are a few questions has been asked by the participants. Let's moving on to that, right? Kanika, you want to address a couple of things on that, especially the KPIs on that front?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, okay. So the first question we have received is, how can brands use content to deliver its media KPIs? While the question is slightly unclear, what I assume you're asking is that how can you modify content to deliver on different medias, is it? If that's the case, yes, we need to modify the content in a way that it works for each of the medias. So basically, the way it works is, for example, we have to understand what kind of media delivers what kind of impact. Facebook is usually, for example, visualized a lot more in a mute environment, and the average skip rate on Facebook is around 3 seconds, if I remember correctly. So your first visual is very critical in Facebook, and rarely with consumers hear the voice. So you need to really have a mute test of your ad before you put it on Facebook. But if a Facebook video is done well, it gives a much higher ROI than any other platform.
Okay, I think can also maybe content inside content placement, right? With brands inside the content placement.
Yes.
Whether how does that affect on media KPIs also? I think it can be the, since it's
Yeah.
not very clear, it can be
Not
that
very
as
clear. We don't know. Yeah.
yeah, if it is if the question is specifically how the content can be added on the media KPIs. So to give you a expression, what we do is when we integrate brands into the content, we use reach and frequencies, two media KPIs per se to deliver. So we can evaluate both in terms of reach as well as frequency. If you are looking at specific answer about that in terms of how media KPIs can be addressed, yes, we can address it in when we are doing an integration into the content. Yeah, you can move to the next one.
Yeah. The next question is relevance versus efficiency. I think Anil, you are the best person to answer this.
Okay.
How does it work for brands in current situation?
Yeah, I think when we look at all this, I think most of the brands during when the budget is reducing, more focus on CPRPs. But the fact is that we have seen that in the current situation, the GRPs or the television ratings have been gone up, or the viewers watching content has been gone up. So that means impressions have gone up, right? So in that scenario, efficiency is already there. So you're already reaching out to more people or more ratings. What is missing? Probably the relevance. I think the bringing relevance into the current situation is the opportunity. Or at the we also seen that content consumption has gone up, and hence the relevance is can be built because people are tend to choose watching the content rather than choose to watch an ad, right? So in that way, being in relevance is, I think, it will be ideal being in content in that front.
Thank you, Anil. The next question.
Yeah, sorry, just to add to relevance, I think based on what we, based on studies that we have as well, our relevance, we can align it with contextualizing and contextualizing in, content depending on the platform. And what we've seen is, on the average, there's a 57% increase in message retention or message understanding whenever the content being viewed by audiences is on the right platform with the right message. So yeah, and I think relevance for in media, I'm talking about media, relevance I think is more long term as well. It has because it adds more impact. It delivers more impact to the brand. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Marco and Anil, for that. The next one is, what are the media KPIs? What are the media KPIs can a brand hope to achieve through content, association or integration, GRPs or reach, or both?
I think I'll take it on. So I think since it's we already addressed media KPIs earlier. It's a similar space in terms of how being in content. Yes, we can measure reach, GRPs, right? It's depending on the brand objective. Now, for example, a brand objective is about driving more reach and get to communicate with more number of people, and then that's about driving reach. And if there is it's about a share of voice to build more speak or loud make more noise in the market and hence get attention of for the brand, and then it's become driving reach or driving GRPs. Now it's depending on what brand objective is, right? So if there is a new brand launch, people want generally brand wants to achieve more reach. If it is basically GRP is as well important there, but there if the objective is about reaching to more customers, then the marketing role of the brand is about driving penetration, then it is about driving reach about it. If it is driving more about getting more market share, then it can be about getting more GRPs, and hence brand is becoming on top of mind to audience. That.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. The next one is, how do you see digital advertising spend to be in 2020? Will it be easier to just go on Facebook and Google or develop content?
I think for the most part, since we don't have a sense of digital advertising spend in Malaysia at the moment, I think it's really a case-to-case basis on what the brand objectives are. But easily, more and more, we're seeing advertisers as we talk to some of our clients. We've been seeing it has increased a little, slightly increased in terms of digital spending for them. Not with sacrificing some other touch point, like for example, again, speaking just in general terms, for example, scaling down a bit on out of home, scaling down on radio, for example, and increasing investments on personal media like Facebook or personal platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and similar platforms. So to the question of really to be easier just to go on Facebook and Google, I think it really depends on what your brand and communications objectives are. If you feel that Facebook and Google will address your media your media objectives, then by all means. But in a situation or in an environment, especially in Malaysia, where Facebook and Google anyway, I think for the most part, where digital spending are going, it's something that definitely you can go. Of course, there's also all strategies and tactics like programmatic to ensure that you deliver your message in a way that's the right content at the right time for the right audiences. So there are definitely options for you as it were during the pre-COVID. But I think the message that we're trying to, additional message that we want you to consider is really about impact of advertising. Especially on digital, where there's a fragmentation of many options you can choose from. Yeah. And of course, content is one of them.
Just to add to that, we have seen that there are live streaming, streaming of content is at home is increased a lot. And it was already high for a market like Malaysia. And it is already increased further from there where it was. And in the view of that one, it is largely driven by the content which is being produced or shared by OTT platforms like View and those kind of platforms. Now, if you look at in that per se, it is about brands. If brands are following the audience, brands are following the target consumers is also there in the content platforms like OTT platforms in that. So that way, brands will continue. I think we'll be exploring more such platforms in future, considering there are more reach has been added on that platform as well.
Yeah, and do consider the role of that particular medium before content, creating any content for that. Great, thank you. The next question is around after MCO or CMCO is finally lifted, what you just showed in the statistics, does it mean all readings will revert back to the pre-MCO period?
It's a good question.
Was this statistic referring to the TV charts? But anyway, I think if I have to put my 2 cents here, no one has the crystal ball. To be honest, I know it's a cop-out answer. What we're saying is if there are still restrictions in movements, and if there are still parameters in which people will spend more time, more than usual, pre-COVID at home, then I think the behavior might change, and it can slide into probably the next 3 or 6 months. Yeah, as they say, and I think this is likewise echoed in some of the scholars or some of the readings and opinions that have been put out there. We are already in the new normal, and this could very well be the behavior that we should be adopting or anticipating in the next couple of months or probably years. Yeah.
Yeah. To add on, in terms of media, yes, we will gradually see people going back, but we do also see that a lot of companies are moving to, a larger chunk of their employees going work from home. So there still could be some kind of permanent change that we can expect there. Secondly, if you talk about generally consumer needs and content, this and the needs and the way I look at content could change for a much longer time, because my sensitivity towards hygiene, my sensitivity towards particular kind of exposures, like I gave you an example of testers, probably the next 10 years a woman may not be able to use a tester. I don't know. So it depends on what are you trying to look for. Some of these statistics may go down to somewhere near to what they were pre-MCO, but a lot of them may remain. Okay. Now the last is, will you be sharing the deck? Yes, we will be sharing the deck as well as the link for the webinar, in case you want to share it with other people. Please feel
And
free.
please feel free to write back to us if you have any other questions. We are happy to address, and we'll be home, safe at home, and everybody take care of yourself. Thank you very much for Kanika and Mako for joining us for this session, and thank you for everyone to join us for this wonderful session. I hope this was helpful for everyone, and has some insights for your category or brands which you are working on. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Stay safe. Bye-bye.